So, thank you for joining us for another clinical trial update from the Prader-Willi Research Foundation Australia. I'm Kathleen Jones. I'm the founder and the CEO of PWRFA, and I'm also mum to Chloe. And she was a source of our inspiration and the catalyst for our work at Prader-Willi Research Foundation. And this is her beautiful smile lighting up your screen tonight from a sleep study when she was just 2. I'll also acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands on which we're meeting tonight across this vast continent of Australia that we all call home. And we pay our respects to elders past, present, and future, and very much look forward to the day when there is healthcare equality for all Australians. In particular, I'd like to welcome any First Nations people who are joining us tonight. So, jumping in, let's start with a little bit of housekeeping. If you're new to, we are expecting the session to run for about an hour, and we are recording this session for people who can't join us live tonight. I'd like to encourage everybody to send through questions using the chat function on Zoom. So we often use Teams, which is Q&A. Tonight we're using Zoom, and it's the chat function that you're looking for. You can do this anytime during the webinar. I also want to remind you that if you do unmute yourself, the noise can travel throughout the whole webinar. So please try to keep on mute and pop your questions in chat. I also want to cover something briefly and acknowledge the news that many of you will have seen today. Soleno Therapeutics has announced that it's being acquired by Neurocrine Biosciences for $2.9 billion US. And Neurocrine CEO has made a further statement that Vycat, which is the only approved treatment for hyperphagia in PWS, will not be made available outside the United States. For families who have been hoping for access to this treatment, I know that it really is disappointing, and we share your frustration. I do need to be honest with you that this decision is commercial, and it is a reality that we are dealing with, and it's not something that our organisation or any single organisation can change. But what we can do, and this is exactly why tonight matters, is bring more treatments into the pipeline and bring more clinical trials to Australia. That means our community is less vulnerable to any single company's commercial decisions. Bright Minds Biosciences is here running a trial in Australia for Australians with PWS, and this is the kind of progress that we need to keep building on for our loved ones. So I'd really ask you tonight to focus on what's in front of us and the positive actions that our community can take to continue to progress what we all want, which is a treatment for our kids in Australia, our kids and adults here in Australia. I'll hand over to Diane, who will shortly moderate more of a conversation about this particular clinical trial with you. Firstly, I will quickly touch on our May 1500K this May walk. So whilst we are here to talk about clinical trials, and clinical trials are a really vital link in evaluating the efficacy and safety of potential treatments to move them from benchtop to bedside. And our children and adults can play a really key role in this part of the treatment development pathway. At the same time, these clinical trials enable our children and adults to access the latest in potential treatments, which is particularly important where we don't have any accessible approved medications apart from growth hormone. And we really are delighted to see more clinical trials available to Australians with PWS than ever before. And look, this really is in many ways thanks to our wonderful research director, who's with us tonight, Diane. She's worked really hard behind the scenes for years to build the relationships and the infrastructure to bring about this change. And Diane, I want to acknowledge you tonight and thank you for your hard work. Our role at PWRFA is to inform families, inform clinicians about available clinical trials and to try and address the barriers to participating in them. This doesn't mean we endorse any particular clinical trial. It means that we build the opportunities for our community to participate in clinical trials. And then you can discuss those opportunities with your clinician before commencing any clinical trial. As many of you know, we celebrate May, which is the International Month of Prader-Willi Awareness, with our Finding 15 walks. And this year we're hosting 1500K this May to bring our community together right across the country and to raise awareness and funds for Prader-Willi research. We're really excited about this walk and about really bringing together our community in a shared goal, which really encapsulates the essence of PWRFA, our community pulling together to create real change. So it's really simple to get involved. You can simply go to www.finding15.org.au, sign up as a team, sign up as an individual within a team, set your challenge, and then get moving and track your kilometres throughout May. And the goal is that we're going to get to 1,500 kilometres through our community with our kids and adults participating. And we know that we can do this, and we know that this is a really great and realistic option for our children and our adults with Prader-Willi to get involved and to support their health objectives as well. So we're looking forward to this, and the very exciting thing is that the first $2,400 of funds will be matched by Bright Minds. So thank you very much to Bright Minds for helping us to get rolling. And now I'm going to hand over to Diane. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kath. I'm always really excited about clinical trials. I think that they represent such a special part of the drug development pipeline, where for the first time we get to see how all this amazing science is going to come together in a real life person and whether these drugs are actually going to work. So tonight we have a special opportunity. We're putting the spotlight on the NOVA trial, which is Bright Minds Biosciences trial. And what this webinar gives you an opportunity to do is to really ask lots and lots of questions, to look in detail and hear from the experts about this trial. So as Kath said, I think we'll reinforce our disclaimer again, if we can bring that up. We don't endorse trials, but what we want is we want to create opportunities like this where you can get the most up-to-date information and ask all those questions of both the people who've designed the study, so that's Bright Minds Biosciences, as well as the lead site coordinators. So we'll have joining us tonight Tania from the trial site in Sydney and Dan from the trial site in Melbourne. So if we can kick off, so let's stop sharing, and if I can invite Steve, Tania, and Dan to pop their cameras on so we can see who's on our panel for tonight.
Diane, it's not allowing me to turn it on. It says the host has to turn it on. Sorry.
No worries, that's all right. Welcome, Steve. So we might leave that with the wonderful Nicole. We're getting some pictures up. So I think as we get started, I thought it might be nice just to learn a little bit about each other. So before we dig into the science, Steve, I wonder if I can invite you to just introduce yourself and Bright Minds Biosciences. I understand that you're a fairly regular visitor down here in Australia.
Yeah, that's right. It's lovely to be able to come down under, as we say, and I guess you guys say. I'm Steve Collins. I am the Chief Medical Officer of Bright Minds Biosciences. By training, I'm a neurologist and a pharmacologist, so I'm MD, PhD, and I've been the Chief Medical Officer for Bright Minds for over a year. Just a bit of the history of the company. The company started about 10 years ago with the goal of trying to improve people's health through very directed activities looking at one of the so-called neurotransmitters in the brain, serotonin. Not to get into a lot of it, but there are chemicals which go between one cell and another, one neuron to another in the brain, and they depend on chemicals like serotonin. People who have Prader-Willi syndrome have less active or ability to have the cells respond to serotonin than people who don't have Prader-Willi. These um, sort of come together in terms of our research trying to improve serotonin transmission and the basic science, the biology, and in fact, a clinical trial that was done years ago with an older molecule, which basically is no longer available, which demonstrated not only in animals who had models of Prader-Willi, but in people who had Prader-Willi. It was a study of 13 adults, basically, demonstrating that a molecule like ours uh, improved both the hyperphagia and some of the behavioral issues, which are so troubling for patients and their families. We have been working on perfecting drugs that can help serotonin. I give a personal example. I have hypothyroidism, runs in my family. So every night I take a small pill, which gives me thyroid hormone, and that brings my levels up to the levels that my body is needing. And that's, in a simplistic way, exactly what we're trying to do with BMB 101 in a very specific part of a receptor, etc., which is a lovely story. But long and the short of it is that we believe for people with Prader-Willi, the therapy may help, we hope, hyperphagia, as well as a range of neurobehavioral problems with anxiety, agitation, temper control, things like that. We have done a early study in Australia, which is ongoing, but the main phase is completed for people who have very severe epilepsies, who also have, if you will, a deficit of serotonin that's studied quite well for a range of people who had quite severe epilepsies. It also extends the number of people who have been given the drug. So we have roughly 100 people, a little less, who've been exposed to the drug, all in Australia, and people have done well. There have been no serious adverse events to the drug. So that's a little bit about me. I'm a neurologist. I have seen patients with Prader-Willi, not a lot, because these were patients who also had seizures, and my sub-training is in epilepsy. But the advantage we have of bringing this trial to Australia is we have experts like Dr. Markovic and Dr. Fineberg, who actually are experts as endocrinologists and who have experience in trying to help people with this so difficult disease. Thanks, Diane.
That's all right. It's a really interesting study. I think that I'm quite fascinated by the story of sort of starting in epilepsy and then hopping across and finding applications in Prader-Willi syndrome as well. How did that come about? How did Prader-Willi land on the radar?
Yeah, well, this gets more into the science, but what we're trying to do is improve those older medicines, which had a number of side effects. The drug I was talking about is called fenfluramine, still can be used for very severe epilepsies, but unfortunately, because it does more than just act on the serotonin receptor we're talking about, the 5-HT2C receptor, it can cause, has potential for problems with the heart and requires people to have echocardiograms and can't be given to people who weigh more than about 40 kilograms. So the medicinal chemists who were co-founders with our founder Ian McDonald attempted and successfully attempted to find chemicals which would only bind to one part of a serotonin receptor, the so-called 5-HT2C receptor. Now, a lot of scientists way before us had been looking to see what is it that underlies some of the problems in Prader-Willi. One of those is a circuit that starts in the hindbrain, the back of the brain, and goes through circuits in the brain which control hunger. And it's known that there are abnormalities of that circuit in terms of serotonin transmission. Also, some of the behavioral issues for people with Prader-Willi and also for some of the severe epilepsies are circuits which go from sort of the midbrain to part of the front of the brain and control emotional behaviors. Those we know can be helped in some people with serotonin drugs. In fact, there are a number of patients with Prader-Willi who take so-called SSRI, serotonin type drugs. Unfortunately, those drugs work a little bit differently than ours and have not really been tremendously helpful for the majority of people with Prader, certainly don't do much for hyperphagia. But those give signals that it would work. This drug fenfluramine, there was a small study in the 1980s in 13 people with Prader, and it was of a design where a person would have no drug or have drug, and during different periods of time, they would look to see if there was an effect. Our study, and Dr. Markovic and Dr. Fineberg will probably get into this, is a so-called double-blind placebo-controlled study. So there's a phase where the family comes in and the patient comes in, and we observe what are the problems for the patient, recording it in diaries. And then the drug is given in increasing amounts over several weeks. And then there's a 2-month period of time where we measure to see whether there's an effect. So there are half of the people who will be taking a placebo sugar pill, and then actually it's not sugar, it's artificial sugar. And then the other half will take the active drug. Now, all patients who come in the trial have the opportunity at the end of that maintenance phase to be placed on the drug. And we will make a commitment as a company that we will continue to provide the drug until it's approved, or unless there is some sort of an issue with it and it has to be pulled from further research. We certainly hope that's not going to be the case. We've already started plans for so-called regulatory phase 3 studies in the epilepsies on a global basis, including Australia. And so we believe, and regulatory agencies believe, that this is a drug which is adequately safe to be able to give to people with diseases like Prader-Willi and advance. We would hope that this study, which will have someplace between 16 and 20 subjects, patients, would allow us to then enter into a so-called regulatory study. You're right. I've been in Australia many, 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 many times. We have huge respect for the clinicians in Australia. Uh, um, I don't think Australians really understand the power of the Australian medical uh, uh, system. The probably half a dozen to a dozen medical institutions in Australia are not just world class, they're at the top of the world in terms of class experience, ability to help people with their various and sundry problems. And it's a delight. Research like this is like a three-legged stool. A company, because we have to come up with the drug, the academic institutions where they work with patients to do these clinical trials, and then the patients and their families. Now, there's a fourth leg here in Australia, which is not always present, and that is advocacy organizations like PWS RFA, whose mission it is to help people and their families with severe disease, in this case, Prader-Willi, advance and find new therapies, which will hopefully help people with all the range of problems that we know exist. Thanks, Diane.
Yeah. I like that analogy. It's no one individual is getting there all by themselves. So it's through working together that we can progress things. So BM 101 then, so what I'm hearing from all of that is that this has been a very strategically designed molecule, and that you've had successful trial data come out of the epilepsy field, which can give us confidence as we move into a Prader-Willi trial. And this is a phase 2 trial, from what I understand. So it's we throw around a lot of words there. Placebo-controlled, double-blind, randomized, phase 2. Can you perhaps help our families sort of understand where that sits? So we've seen some phase 3. This is a phase 2. What does that actually mean in terms of their participation in a trial and the contribution that they're making?
Sure. So in pharmaceutical drug development, you have basically 4 phases of drug development. Well, there's a preclinical stage, which is where you expose animals to the drug. You try to understand how much you should give to help fix the situation and what the safety and tolerability of the drug is. Then you put this package together, and it goes in Australia to an ethics group called an HREC. Scientists there review it, and then you go into phase one generally. And those are healthy humans who take the drug either as a single dose or multiple doses over, for example, a week. And you then understand how much of the drug, when you take it, gets into your body. And do you have side effects? Do you have problems with it? We did that study actually in Adelaide at a so-called phase one center associated with uh, the hospital there. And that was in 64 subjects with single dose and multiple dose. And we demonstrated that it could be given in certain doses and certain amounts would come in the bloodstream, and it was safe and well tolerated. The next phase are small studies in patients who actually have the disease to say, okay, if I give someone the drug, does it help? And you look at various endpoints. So, for example, in epilepsy studies, does it decrease seizures? Does it stop some seizures? In Prader-Willi, there are two main avenues, and certainly the experts will talk a bit more about this, I presume, in a minute. One is using the HQCT. That's an instrument in terms of the field that is a diary type instrument, something where people record uh, their feeding and eating habits. Second of all are a series of tests, again around diaries, called the Prader-Willi PDBS profile, and that attempts to capture people's moods. So in a small phase two study, what you can do is have people come in and either get the drug or get a placebo. We used to say sugar pill. They're actually sucralose, so it's not real sugar. And then you observe to see in a blinded fashion. So the patient doesn't know if they're on the therapy, nor do the physicians know for a short period of time. Short in this instance is about 3 months. Um, and at the end of that time, then the data is put together and analyzed to see whether during this period of time there was a real effect of the drug. Because, sometimes people behaviors go up and down. Sometimes drugs don't work. Sometimes they work very well at a certain dose. So that study helps enable the company to present information to regulatory agencies in the United States, Europe, Australia, Japan, and saying, aha, we think this amount of drug is going to be useful for people with an entity. And now we're going to do a much bigger study, although in Prader-Willi it would not be that huge, probably 200, 300 people. Again, observation phase, titration of drug, either placebo or active drug for usually a couple of months, and then an open label phase in which people know what they're taking and the doses can be adjusted. So that's phase one, two, three. Phase four are studies after drugs approved to ask questions. For example, are there certain things you can do in certain populations of people, maybe very young people, or sometimes quite old people, to ask specific questions? Does that help?
Yeah, that's a really good description. Thank you. I think would be a good time to bring Tania and Dan into the conversation around, what that starts to actually look like. Dan, who's just come on screen there, hi Dan, is based at the Alfred. He's the site lead, so an endocrinologist down here in Melbourne. And Tania, we're familiar to many of you as one of our expert clinicians up in Sydney, and Tania is running the Sydney site. So I've heard all this so far, this sounds really interesting, and I decide to reach out to either of your site. So maybe we'll start with your site, Tania. If I reach out to you, what's going to happen if I put my hand up and say, tell me more? I'm thinking I might be interested in this trial.
I'll hand you over to Erica, who's running it. No, I mean, obviously we will send you all the patient information brochures. We've got patient information sheets for carers and parents. And also there would be a sheet, I think, usually in all trials for the participant. So you would have the opportunity to read that information closely and then come back to us. Then we would reach out to you again, find out if you're interested, answer any questions. And if after all that you still would like to be, you or you and your child would like to be involved, then you'll be invited to our facility. And if you live a distance from Sydney, the costs will be covered, I think, Stephen?
That's correct.
Yes.
For travel and hotel for the subject, the patient, as well as appropriate necessary family or
Yeah.
caregiver.
Yeah. So you'll come to our facility and we'll screen you closely again because there's always very strict inclusion exclusion criteria. Make sure that it's appropriate and safe for your child to be involved. And then there's once that's happened, if everything, all the boxes are ticked and you still want to be involved, then we sign consent forms, join the study, and you get it's exactly as Stephen said, you'll get a medication, which might be the active or the placebo, and you'll be given that product from the pharmacy at our hospital, and then you'll have regular visits, but you can contact us anytime, in fact, 24 hours a day. If anything goes wrong, if there's any questions, any concerns, we will answer if there's anything serious. If it's not super serious, you might not get an answer immediately. But we're around and we've been doing trials for a long time and trials in Prader-Willi more and more, which is great. Have I covered it enough, Diane? Have I forgotten something?
Well, I think that's excellent. Dan, is it a very similar process for people reaching out to the Melbourne site?
Yeah, I think we'll have a very similar process, and sometimes there's some nuances about whether you might have certain concerns about the criteria for fitting into the trial. We're very, very happy to talk through that and support you and support if you're seeing other clinicians to just if you're very keen to engage in the trial, we're happy to support that process to liaise with other clinicians who you might be dealing with to consider any adjustment to your other medications or processes so that you might be able to fit criteria for the trial in due course.
That's actually something very important that Dan raised that I forgot to mention is that, and what we're doing now for a number of patients who we think would be good for the trial, is that a lot of our patients, I don't know if it's the same in Victoria, are already on an SSRI. And so we are, and I think a lot of people in the community know Dr. Portelli, Marissa Portelli, who's been a godsend for us. And often these medications, almost, they're not prescribed by our service. And this is a good opportunity to wean patients off drugs that we don't think are particularly effective anyway, and be able to offer a drug that may actually help them a lot more. So that's a part of the process as well. And having a really close look at what medications patients are on, because there's often these drugs are used when there's better drugs. So some of our patients we've been taking them off this SSRI and putting them on a drug that a few people that I'm sure a lot of you are aware of called guanfacine that can be quite helpful in some people with Prader-Willi syndrome. And fortunately, they can be on this drug in this trial. So it's given us an opportunity to actually improve treatment, which you don't always manage to do in trials. So that's been a bit of a bonus for us so far.
That is good news. So that is definitely a question that's coming up already is around the SSRIs. And I think, so if I can summarize what I'm hearing there is that there's plenty of opportunities to have personalized conversations as part of the trial criteria so that you can have, those one-on-one individual conversations around what's going to suit you best as you're working through the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So I guess, is it fair to say the same would hold? So people on other psychotropics, so antipsychotic or antidepressant
Yep.
medications, are
Yep.
they automatically excluded, or is that another
No,
kind of one-on-one conversation?
no, it's a one-on-one. I can't remember Stevens, good Stevens there. I mean, in our experience, antipsychotic medication is often inappropriately prescribed, and we're
Yeah.
doing a lot of work before Bright Minds came along. That's been a big part of our work. It's something that I've been trying to do for however long I've been working in Prader-Willi, which is 16, more than that, 16 plus years, and had occasional sleepless nights when I've made changes, and sometimes asked my husband, who is a psychiatrist, who's a lovely guy, but he says, "Well, I haven't got the patient in front of me. How can I say?" And I just so then I have to make the decision. But anyway, it's great to have that I've had Marissa here to help me make those decisions, and then this is another. So we've been doing it already, but having an alternative medication that might be more appropriate is great.
Mm.
Yeah, just to add to that, yes, it is true. I saw some of the questions come up. So the age range is 18 to 65. We will be expanding to younger people as we complete what's called juvenile tox studies, juvenile toxicology studies in young animals. And when those complete, which would be sometime later this year, we would then go to the ethics group and see if we could bring the ages down. But for right now, it's 18 and above. And patients cannot be on SSRIs or SNRIs. Again, an individual discussion with Dr. Fineberg and Markovic about how those medicines would have to be tapered off. And if they are on an experimental medication, would depend, but basically, easy thing to say is that they can't be on another experimental medication, and so that would have to be tapered off. And again, that's a discussion with the investigators, and it would depend on how long that drug stays around in the body. But after that discussion and a tapering period, then the patient would be able to come in after a time of tapering and no drug, generally a month after completion of taper. For an experimental medication, for example, the aardvark compound, that compound was stopped in development. And so the tapering for that and drug-free period would have to be longer, basically to make sure that we wouldn't have any interactions between those drugs, which could be unfortunate and might actually cause a false signal of a problem. And so those rules have to be upheld.
Mm. It's really important, I think, with all those rules that the focus of those rules is around the safety and managing the risks as much as we possibly can in a clinical trial setting. We
Yes.
have a question here around skin picking and whether you think there's any indication from the biology that obsessive compulsive behaviors like skin picking might be impacted by BMP 101.
Yes. The easy answer is yes. There's no great animal model of skin picking, but there are animals of repetitive behaviors. And so, in a variety of animal models of various behavioral problems, which obviously are animals and not humans, but they're best we can have to try to see if something can help. We think that there would be potential for repetitive behaviors, for agitation, anxiety, and for temper outbursts.
It has potential against a broad range of symptoms by the sound of that, which would be exceptional.
Yeah.
What is the range of visits? How often will someone have to come in? Are they all in person? Um, so numbers of visits and how close together are they?
Yeah. Daniel, Tanya, do you want to?
Yeah, I have to look up the protocol, which I've got in front of me. Maybe Daniel remembers better than me.
I think
But
it's
I'll get the
I've got
page.
5 clinic visits and 4 phone calls, according
Thank
to
you.
the latest protocol. But
That's right.
yeah,
And
Yeah.
that's over 4 months, isn't it? Because it's 1 month
Yeah,
screening, 3 months active drug.
that's correct.
Cool. And we've touched briefly on travel before. So, Stephen, you were saying that travel is possible also for support people who you'd need to come with you as well.
That's correct.
Yeah.
We have engaged a company whose job it is to help organize travel. It's called Scout Clinical. I'm not quite sure if that's exactly ready, but it will be very shortly. And so the family, caregiver, patient can contact, with the help of the site, that external organization, and they can help organize and pay for travel and for necessary expenses, hotel, food. And again, it has to be reasonable, obvious, but we understand that this is a big ask of people. It's one thing if they're 2 blocks away from the Alfred or a block and a half from RPAH, but there are people throughout Australia, and we want to be able to offer the opportunity for those patients also to participate in the study,
So,
including
so people,
Tasmania.
so Stephen, people from interstate, from other states, you'd cover the airfares for that too.
Yeah, even Tasmania, as people have asked.
And if there's any pre-screening assessments that need to be done, we're certainly happy to support that through telehealth and other means to, wherever people are. Yeah.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah. I know this trial's open to adults. Do they have to be living at home or can they be in a residential care facility?
They can be in a residential facility. It will need to be a place that can do a really good job of making sure the medications are being given. The dose is given at breakfast and after dinner. It could be given without food, but the vast majority of medicines do better on a full stomach. And so the place the person would be living in would have to be able to make sure that medicines are being given regularly, and also that there would be regular caregivers who would be able to note in recording instruments the various aspects that I've talked about in terms of the feeding and in terms of the behaviors. And so it could not be someplace where one day there's one person, another different, and there's a uniform care for the patient.
Lots of good things to consider there too. So we have a question asking when the trial will start. So Tanya, then Dan, are
Started
your
already.
sites open?
Yeah, the site. We're ready.
Yep, ready.
Excellent. So you can reach out anytime. They're up and running. Um, once
And
you've
Diane, I have a
done,
question actually. Do you have a link? I should know this and I don't. Do you have a link yet on the PWS RFA to the sites?
So the trial is listed on our clinical trial listing at the moment, and that will have contact details for both sites there as well. So yeah,
Nicole's just put it up.
Nicole's dropped that in the chat for us. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, so that's the easiest place to kind of go for sort of central details around how to reach out for the trial. Absolutely. I've seen slightly different information in different places, so I'm going to take this opportunity to get the perfect answer, if you like. So the open label extension. So you've done the trial. You've worked your way through whichever arm you've randomly landed in, the placebo or the treatment. You finished that up. The open label extension. How long will that go on for?
It'll go on until the drug is approved, which
Yep.
could be, 2 to 3 years. I would hope shorter than longer, but certainly 2 or 3 years is average. Or if there is, and we obviously hope not, a problem with the drug and it has to be withdrawn, then unfortunately it would not be available. We have made a commitment in the epilepsy field. We make a commitment now in the Prader-Willi field. We will not pull this drug until it's approved.
That's good news. It's always a tricky path, I think, isn't it? Especially, phase two, that's potentially quite a long time from a phase three as well. So that's very reassuring to hear. And I think that's, to circle back to where Kath started this with the comment around the changing landscape for global medications and global markets. Nice to hear that commitment being made to the Australian community as well, which is good.
Yeah, I saw there was a question about whether it's approval in US, Europe, or Australia. It's a complicated issue. The easy answer is if it gets approved in the United States, we would submit for approval in Australia. And so during that period of time, we would continue to support the drug.
Excellent. So Australia is the only country that's doing the phase 2 trial. How many countries do you think you'll need to open and to reach your recruitment targets for a phase 3?
Two,
Two?
US and Australia.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
If people have been
You know,
involved in the phase,
in an orphan disease condition like this, the regulatory authorities understand that there's a need to get the therapy approved, but also the need to understand safety and dosing. And so there are about, call it 10,000, maybe 10 to 20,000 patients in the United States with Prader-Willi. Obviously, you take the arithmetic down, there's 1,000 or so in Australia. But regulatory agencies do not require massive studies of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in orphan diseases. We've already had a large number of investigators, experts like Dr. Fineberg, Dr. Markovic come to us and say, when are you going to start in the United States? And my answer is, well, as soon as we have the data from Australia. And so kind of long-winded, but plenty adequate population between Australia and the United States to be able to study the drug, understand its potential efficacy, understand its potential safety or tolerability problems, and then get it approved.
Excellent. All right. I feel like we're probably getting into sort of last call for questions territory. I've come pretty close to the end of mine.
Can I just
Yes.
I think if I've read it, I understood correctly, Stephen, just somebody asked earlier, antipsychotic medications are okay. You can be on an antipsychotic medication.
It will depend on the antipsychotic.
Right.
Some of them have the potential to have problems with serotonin, some don't. So again, that's an individual discussion with yourself, with Dr.
Yep.
Feinberg, and me as
Sure.
need arises.
Sure.
So I think as we put out a last call for questions would be to kind of to do exactly that and just sort of ask, is there, what would be the most important question that you would like families to bring to you when they're considering this trial? So Dan, I'll throw that one to you first. Like what would be your most important message that you'd want families to have?
I think, look, we're really excited to be able to offer this trial for families and people with Prader-Willi syndrome, and I think it's a pretty the criteria for inclusion is pretty broad. So we're happy to discuss, I think, any of those nuances and clarify and just, if you're half interested, please just reach out, and happy to have an initial discussion.
Yep. So we have another question here. I have a child with Angelman mosaic. He is very much like a PWS child and is quite unlike Angelman's. Any chance of joining later?
Later, yes. So there are a range of conditions, Engelmann's, Rett, etc. They usually go by the name of the people who first identified it. And we do have plans to expand for those conditions because they all have, to a greater or lesser degree, an issue with inadequate serotonin transmission.
Excellent. So watch this space. Tania, if I throw you the same question,
Sorry about the fireworks in the background. It's Phantom of the Opera, and we're within.
Oh, I'm sure Steve thought they were for his study.
No, it's not. It's not. The ceasefire's on. Gosh, I should have put my things in. Sorry.
So Tania, I think just to throw it to you as well as what would be important questions that you would like families to be kind of bringing to you. What's the most important thing you'd like them to know about this study at this point in time?
Oh gosh, that's a very hard. I mean, I think Daniel answered that very well. I always like them to know that it's entirely optional. They can leave anytime they want, that we're very grateful for them to be involved, that we have confidence. We wouldn't be doing the trial if we had anxieties about it, but clearly, it's a big ask to come to see us, to offer to agree for your relative to be involved, to make that decision for your relative, loved one. I'd like them to know that we're there to support them, to answer any questions. We don't judge. If they change their mind, don't want to be involved, that's fine. Totally understand. It's not straightforward to be in a drug. It's often people get a lot of benefit and enjoy being in a drug trial, but it's not. There's stress involved for you as a family, for your loved one who has to make the effort to come. It's not always easy. So we understand where you're coming from, and we're here. We're delighted to have you involved, but there'll be other trials, there'll be other opportunities, and that's about it.
I think very, very well said, Tania, and Dan as well, that it is something that we are very mindful of as well, and very grateful for people who do participate in trials. It's a big undertaking, and yeah, just something that we're very grateful for. It is such a critical component of moving drugs through the development pipeline, but it is a very personal decision that's being made. So to know that they can reach out and get that response from you guys, get their questions answered, I think is really, really awesome. Stephen, what about you? Any sort of last comments on the trial? Really important things that you would like families to know.
Well, we're here to try to help. We really hope this therapy is going to be transformative for people. Obviously, I don't know yet, but we have a lot of people in the company all rooting for it and hoping that it helps people and their families. I want to thank you and Kathleen and other organizations, for example, the Prader-Willi General Organization that there was a representative on earlier, I think, when I saw the names, for your help in getting the word out about this important trial. And with that, thanks again.
Amazing. Excellent. Well, look, as I alluded to earlier, the contact details for the two sites, so Tania in Sydney and Daniel in Melbourne, are available on our website. If you have questions, we can pass those along. But please ask lots and lots of questions. Work out if this is a clinical trial that you think might be a good fit for you. If it's not, you will also find on our website a range of other trials. Trials can be as simple as a survey, or as involved as the one you've heard tonight. They all help build the evidence base. They all help progress us and accelerate us towards new therapies. So, as I said, we don't endorse any particular trial, but we would encourage you to ask questions and consider whether it is something that you would like to be involved in. So I think for tonight, I will offer our heartfelt thanks to our three speakers. We really appreciate these opportunities to actually put the questions to you, and for you taking the time to do that. I would offer again our thanks to everyone who has asked those questions and considered participating in a clinical trial or has actually participated in a trial. That's very much appreciated. And I think with that, we will just sign off and say goodnight. Look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel and Tania.
Pleasure.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.